I agree wholeheartedly with what Tigani said, that it's the most important asset for a mediator in this situation is to have a strong understanding of the context. More than in any other situation, if you don't have that strong understanding, you run a lot of risks, and most importantly, you run the risk of actually doing harm instead of contributing to the resolution of the tensions. And so I would say that our engagements in this situation, in these types of settings, I would categorize them rather in two baskets. One basket would be countries where we had been present for a long time, and where we had local teams of national, what we call in the mediation field, insider mediators, meaning nationals of those countries, who may have worked in political parties, in parliaments, in trade unions, in civil societies in their countries. So we relied on the networks and the advice of those colleagues on how to go about it. And then there is the other type of engagement where we might have been asked to assess whether there is a role for us in countries where we had not been present before, that we're going through situations of mass protests or political transitions of one sort or the other. So in the first basket, the way that we would go about it would be through a diverse set of tools that doesn't necessarily apply to all situations, and might actually, some of those tools might be politically unrealistic and not feasible, while in other situations they might work perfectly well. One of those is public consultations. So when you know when you feel comfortable that you have enough understanding of the situation of the actors, then you might, as a third-party mediator, hold public consultations. What we did in some situations was hold them in different parts of the countries with different types of constituencies that we felt confident were relevant for the conversation. Those consultations were used in order to introduce the concept of dialogue. First, to introduce the concept of dialogue, the concept of negotiation as a way of dealing with the issues that the specific country was dealing with, but also as an opportunity to air the issues and to allow the participants of those consultations to listen to each other. And also understand that there is within the movement diverse opinions, diverse interest groups that are represented. A second tool that we have used is to hold what probably takes place later on in the period in the lifespan of a nonviolent movement, but to hold national dialogues. Those usually are relevant tools when actually some sort of understanding has already been achieved on the way forward. So national dialogues are not relevant tools at the very early days when people are pouring out on the streets, but they may be in some situations relevant tools a few months down the line when just a very basic agreement on how to move forward has been reached, but when everything else has not been agreed yet. And just I will mention a third tool, and there are many actually, and I'm sure Juan will have more ideas. And the third is social media analysis. Through social media analysis, we were able to identify important influencers, but also to identify the issues that were most discussed, especially when it comes to protests that were dominated and influenced heavily by youth. So those actors usually have been active on social media. And so having an analysis and an assessment of what it is that they're discussing, what groups are forming around what issues on social media was useful for us in order to then inform the other tools that I described, such as national dialogues and public consultations.